Mordecai and Rigby, you set up the chairs.
But that's simply not possible.
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
Having spent much of the 90s and early 2000s making banger after banger, Cartoon Network kicked off the late 2000s by making a very strange business decision. They introduced a short-lived programming block by the name of CN Reel, which contained all manner of live-action shows. Because, of course, people watching a channel called Cartoon Network really wanted to watch some live-action shows.
Brilliant! Brilliant!
Whether this move was done to compete with the live-action output of rivals like Nickelodeon or the Disney Channel, this was still a short-lived decision, and future historians would go on to define it as incredibly stupid. While cartoons such as Chowder and The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack were being aired at this time, and both are really great shows in their own right, this is still a period that's regarded rather poorly by Cartoon Network fans.
Chowder, look at what you've done! Now the animators are gonna have to draw all this fire!
So it was certainly a bit shocking when, in the years that followed the CN Reel debacle, Cartoon Network put out two of their greatest shows of all time, Adventure Time and Regular Show. Yeah, a quick disclaimer before we go any further, Regular Show was the better of the two. There are heretics who would try and convince you that this isn't the case and that Adventure Time is the better of the two shows, but they are dangerous subversives not to be trusted. But what was it about Regular Show that made it one of Cartoon Network's finest products? Debuting in 2010 and running for 8 seasons over the span of 7 years, it spent the better part of a decade entrenching itself in people's minds. It was a show that benefited from having a rather simple premise and not too much continuity for a casual viewer to worry about. Well, except for the last season where they went into space, but, you know, we'll cut them some slack there. But, for the most part, it's fairly easy for any casual viewer to dip in and out of any season to watch the slice-of-life adventures of the various park members. At first glance, it would perhaps be easy to believe that a show about a bunch of park workers wouldn't make for a very funny cartoon, and that may be the case were it not for the fact that the cast of Regular Show are a bunch of degenerate weirdos. There are of course the main duo of Mordecai and Rigby, the former being a talking blue jay and simp supreme, Rigby, a talking raccoon who starts off as the immature dumbass of the two but becomes far more mature as the series progresses, or Benson, the grumpy park manager who is also a talking gumball machine, or Skips, the groundskeeper yeti who is also an immortal warrior. Hey, good for him. And then there's Pops who... You know what, let's not talk about Pops. Really, the most normal member of the park crew is Muscle Man, and he's green for some reason. High Five Ghost is also there. Given how diverse and bizarre the main cast are, you'd be given the impression that this is a world that doesn't have a whole lot of logical cohesion to it.
And you're right.
Well, that's partially true, I suppose. For as strange as it may seem at a glance to have talking animals, talking candy, cryptids, ghosts, and talking candy machines as people, as far as the world of Regular Show is concerned, these are just, well, people, going about their ordinary lives, just doing regular things. I'd argue that, well, it's a part of the series' charm, that this offbeat cast of characters just goes about normal lives. Or, they attempt to have regular, normal lives, at any rate. But another big factor of what makes Regular Show work as a series is the fact that that's not quite possible for the cast. You see, the big thing about Regular Show's format is that not a single episode can go by without something absolutely batshit happening towards the end of it. Oh, it'll start off innocuously enough, usually with Mordecai and Rigby being asked to handle some sort of mundane chore from Benson. But towards the end, it will have snowballed into some sort of absolute insanity. Like, for instance, Mordecai and Rigby have to do all Skips' chores for a day, which, somehow culminates in them having a fist fight with an immortal being outside of time and space.
Give them the fist of justice.
You know what? I think you guys were right. I mean, no mere mortal can fight Chlor...
Or Benson ends up getting replaced by a new park manager, and towards the end of the episode, it turns out she's a giant demon. I'm sure there are some of you who heard that sentence and thought to yourselves, wow, that's relatable. Shut up. Or Mordecai and Rigby have to go and set up the chairs, which culminates in a giant video game monster rampaging through the park. That was from the very first episode. They were letting you know what you were getting into right out of the gate here. Honestly, the format was probably one of Regular Show's greatest features. There's an argument to be made that it was formulaic, and to an extent that's certainly true. The vast majority of episodes did follow the same general idea of starting off mundane and then rapidly escalating into something absolutely nuts before, again, everything's back to normal by the end of the episode. But a whole lot of the charm came from the fact that you could never predict how things were going to go off the rails. For instance, there's one episode called Guys Night, which is, well, a guys' night involving the main members of the park crew hanging out after work. And so Pops, on a dare, ends up drinking a whole gallon of milk, which puts him into a coma, which sends his consciousness into a weird parallel dimension full of weird little milk monsters. And then he, and everyone else who did the milk gallon dare, find themselves being chased down by these weird little monsters and have to make a desperate escape. This isn't insane rambling on my part, this was the plot of an episode. Another big part of Regular Show's appeal? Well, it was the fact that it was always trying to push the envelope with what it could get away with showing in a kid's cartoon, and when you're growing up watching it, you tend to appreciate things like that. In retrospect, it's kinda wild that they were able to get away with showing what they did, especially on the UK Cartoon Network. For anyone not in the know, the English branch of Cartoon Network can be more than a little overzealous when it comes to censorship. Even something as basic as Finn spitting on this kid on an episode of Adventure Time got cut. Yeah, God forbid the precious cherubs in England see something as heinous as someone spitting on someone else, while they're all busy stabbing each other outside school.
Right, I'll tell you what, you fat little cunt.
But on Regular Show, well, they managed to get away with quite a lot. You'd lose track of the amount of regular-ass guns just shown on screen, and every single villain seemed to end the episode in a body bag.
You kidding me? School is overrated! I didn't go to school and look at me!
Nobody talks that way about college education in my restaurant.
And Rigby was killed off on screen a surprising number of times, pretty brutally too. Yeah, okay, it wasn't exactly South Park in terms of edgy content, but still, it's appreciated they were trying to push the envelope as hard as they did. It certainly helped make Regular Show even more memorable. I can still vividly recall the episode where the park crew had a big gunfight with a bunch of animatronics. I also want to take a moment to touch on the characters just a little bit more. While I mentioned earlier that Regular Show isn't particularly heavy when it comes to continuity, there is a little bit of it when it comes to the cast. Particularly in seeing them grow and develop with the passage of time. For instance, Benson starts off as sort of a two-dimensional grumpy manager type, kinda like Squidward, I guess. But you get to learn more about why he is the way that he is, and over time you also get the impression that Mordecai and Rigby are kind of assholes on occasion, so you can't really blame Benson for being against them at times. Also, it turns out that he was both a god-tier drummer and some kind of underground stick hockey champion. Good for him. Or getting to learn more about Skips as the seasons go by on how he became the immortal groundskeeper of the park. Or watching Rigby gradually develop a mature romantic relationship with Eileen while Mordecai is still fumbling the bag season after season. Goddamn simp.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
There is no punchline. It's not a joke.
And High Five Ghost is also there. Regular Show certainly proved that a series could be episodic in nature, but characters could still have, you know, character to them. And while it may have ended, the creator, J.G. Quintel, soon went on to create a similar show called Close Enough. The two shows are rather similar in format and the type of humor used in both, but with the key difference being that Close Enough was oriented towards adults right out of the gate. Honestly, it's a really great continuation from Regular Show, and I'd certainly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. I'm very excited to see where Close Enough goes from here.
Bruh.
There are no words to encapsulate the sheer, blistering, testicle-shredding hatred I feel towards the Warner Brothers Discovery merger.